Real Men of Real Estate with Steve Matley, construction manager and real estate developer, business owner, and educator.
Did you know that right now there's 22,000 units deficit?
Tunde Ogunwole, real estate development professional, Naval Academy grad, and veteran with a deep understanding of the public sector process.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Brian Fox, real estate expert and investor, dedicated to helping hundreds of clients make money in real estate every year.
There's so much housing going in.
The builders are begging for more land.
Future company can come in, lease up space to employ those people who are living in the homes.
We have to put the housing in place.
But we either have to have houses,
They want to make sure that there's a strong employment.
logistics centers, things like information hubs. We are a shipping economy now. There's economies all over the country where their prices are doubling and tripling.
Hi, I'm Tunde Ogunwole, and welcome to the Real Men of Real Estate. As always, we've got Steve Matley and Brian Fox, and we've talked about many times how to add value. In this episode, we're going to focus on adding value in residential, and we are going to kick this off with Brian Fox, who's really going to talk about different ways you can improve the value of your home and improve the value of residential projects. Brian, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tunde. So one of the biggest things that comes up in my business is there's a large element of romantic asphyxiation to what a real estate deal looks like, how to sell it for the highest value, and what people see on TV and bringing that to real life and saying, oh, we could do this, oh, we could do that. And the reality is most people treat a real estate project like an art project as opposed to a business project. And the biggest thing you can do is first understand that it's math. There is an end in sight to what you can spend and add value to. And you want to make sure you're doing it with the best possible outcome. So my biggest thing is cost benefit analysis. Now, each of you both know what cost benefit analysis, but for the layman, cost benefit is simply what does it cost and how much am I going to get from the benefit of it? Is it worth that? What is the versus of that that's going to make it worthwhile? So I'll give you an example. Cost benefit. People buy a house and they say, let's put in a pool, right? So a pool on a property, or let's say, do I have a choice between a pool and a fire pit? Pool, fire pit, or tennis court? Which of those costs the most? Which actually adds the most value? And the reality is a pool might be nice, but the most basic pool from the prices I've received in the past is about $50,000 plus. It's going to go up from there. Now, will it add more than $50,000? Maybe. But if I could spend $5,000 and put in a fire pit and a little putting green for another 10, I spent 15 and I got as much or more value than I did from the pool. One cost 50, one cost 15, and these are general numbers, but I've priced these things out before. That is a very possible number, and you would get just as much, if more value from the fire pit and the mini golf course as you would from the pool, but people will think a pool adds a lot more value. So the cost benefit analysis is a very strong way of looking as to what you could get from a project. I know we've talked in other episodes about commercial and in land and how you do these things in total, but the reality is, and if you guys want to chime in, it's totally good with me. The way you pursue a project is first take a step out of it and don't think this is what I would want, because that's the biggest mistake I see everybody doing is I really like these, beveled handles on my toilet seats versus this thing is very open. It's very clean. It's very easy. So if you guys wanted to suggest real quick things that you've worked on in the past as it relates to residential, that's my experience.
A couple things that you've highlighted a lot, and I think it definitely applies in single-family residential, is that if it's a single-family residential and the person's an owner-occupant and they're putting their property on the market, they have an emotional attachment. You talk a lot about
Sure.
residential, that a lot of it's emotional. In industrial and what I do in commercial, it's not so much emotional, it's operational, and it really is how does it pencil on a spreadsheet. And so can you maybe give some examples of like an emotional decision that you think tends not to add value? Sometimes I think of artwork and color schemes. Sometimes people have their own perspective of a color palette that they like that's not necessarily matching what the market is looking for. Landscaping sometimes comes to mind for me as like the curb appeal as you're driving up single family residential. That could be something where you want something a little bit more neutral for buyers coming in. But are there some examples that you could give
Yeah, there's
Right?
some stuff. There's some stuff that happens all the time in this business. So as a residential resale agent, what I'll do is I'll sell a property, and the very first thing I do is I go in and I consult with the seller, and I have to understand that I'm going into a situation where it is their house. This is what they want it to be and look like, and they've done a great job with it for them, right? This is their box, and they want to then share that box with the world. They really want to see the next person value it the way they value it. And as soon as you start that conversation, you're actually having two different conversations at the same time. The first is, here's what I did for homework, mom and dad, check it out. What do you think? And then the second is the teacher saying, here's what all the kids did for homework. I'm going to give you all a grade. And there's a difference between saying, I think that's great, Billy, you did a great job, we love the way you did that, versus, well, here's the thing, you didn't cross 7 T's, you didn't dot 2 I's, and you misspelt the. So it's just doesn't have the same grade, because they're looking at it differently, even though they're looking at the same thing for the same potential reasons. So I can tell you 2 significant examples from my past. One was a seller of mine who had an incredible affinity for Disney. And who doesn't love Disney? But everything was Disney. When I mean everything, I mean like everything. Everything was Disney. There was
The happiest place on earth.
the happiest place on earth. There was Disney all over the walls, Disney color schemes. Everything that you could see was Disney or Disney related. Now, there's a thing that happens in our business, and it's called alienation. And it's something that I've coined to understand how when you pick something based upon your interest, you actually are alienating everybody else who may not be interested in that same topic matter for the sake of their residents. You've probably heard in the past people say, take down family pictures. It doesn't have to happen, but if you do leave family pictures up, there has the ability to cause alienation. I don't see myself in this home. It's not a law. It just can happen from time to time, so people say it. But what can alienate people is picking a very dramatic way of having the house presented to the public. So that was one example. So we have all this Disney stuff, and the biggest thing you gotta do is you gotta pull 99% of the Disney stuff out and choose things that are very neutral. Another example that's much more close to home for a lot of people is when people get excited about, 2 more examples. One, people excited about the beach or the mountains or something that's very like fun and festive. And they like, maybe somebody's into tiki bars and they have this tiki bar in the backyard, and then suddenly they cannot stop doing the tiki thing like throughout the entire house because they got this vibe from tiki bars and they think it's the greatest thing on the planet. And to them it is, and it's great. And everybody loves a tiki bar party. I mean, I would, but you can't live in that and show the property the way it is, because people may not be in that modality at that time and think, oh, this is the best thing on earth. Another example, and this is a lot easier to understand, is that some people have a very big problem in doing matching. What I mean by matching is color matching. So for instance, if I started off with a brown kitchen, someone says, well, what goes with a brown kitchen? Easy, brown paint. Okay, what goes with brown paint and a brown kitchen? Brown flooring. What goes with that? Brown backyard. If they can't get off the color because the only thing they see matching with brown is brown. Now that's true, brown matches brown. But the reality is there's a lot of ways to mix a shirt, tie, and shoes. You can do that a bunch of different ways, but many people cannot see that. They don't think that way. And so they create this system of alienation by color scheme. So that's kind of a way that people will come in and buy emotionally or sell emotionally. What they're doing is saying, I cannot see this thing being my house, even if it's the right size, the right square footage, and the right price. They can't, because emotionally, they cannot fathom living in the Disney home, living at the beach all day long, or living in a brown house. They cannot do it.
Well, I think an issue here is there's a difference between what we do when we live in a house and what we do when we're using an investment project. If you live in a house, you may do the theme. You're talking about theming a house,
Right?
Or theming rooms in the house. I remember walking through a house once where every wall in the house was a different color because she liked lots of color, and it was over clutter, a lot of clutter a lot of times too. So, but then you have to change that when you go to sell it. If you're doing an investment, if you're buying a residence and you're using it as an investment, stay away from all that stuff. You want to go to mass appeal. Go find what is the most common design trends, and walk through model complexes of the new tract homes. All that stuff will be on display. Now, you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. There's what I used to call cut rate success symbols. And what that meant was you found what looked like high-end finishes, but you found remnant lots at the liquidators. So you can actually get some decent tile and decent flooring and that kind of stuff, wallpapers, whatever you want. You can find that stuff for next to nothing at a liquidator, because what they have is an end run that was done probably for a commercial project or maybe an apartment complex or something. And it's not enough for a major project anymore, but it's more than enough for a couple of rooms in a house, you know, or a kitchen in a house. You want to look at things that appear to be high end, but they don't cost you a lot of money. How much does it cost to epoxy the garage floor? Well, that may appeal to a lot of people, to ladies that like a clean garage that looks like you get it off the floor, to guys that are looking at the ultimate workshop kind of a thing. It's a basis. I look at even finishing out an unfinished garage. If you're in some of the older homes, that doesn't cost that much to drywall and tape it and then throw some paint up on it. And it can make an enormous difference in that suddenly being someone looks at it and says, wow, this is a great clean garage versus an old dirty shed of a garage. So there's a lot of things you can do. And then adding square footage is huge. So I think the single biggest thing you can do to add value in a market where you can't find undervalued properties is add square footage, add an ADU, expand it, put an extra room on, do what they call a 3-season room or a California room, add on. Those are fairly inexpensive because they're mostly screens and glass. Really, it's not a real room, but it adds interior square footage. And if that's done correctly, that can add significant amount of value to your home. And I agree with you, the pool, you never get that money back. People want to sink a lot of money to creating a great outdoors with a big barbecue island and stuff. Well, you can do that inexpensively, or you can do that really expensively. If you're going to do just basically steel studs and some hardy backer and some stucco finish on it with a relatively inexpensive stainless steel barbecue, you could probably do that pretty expensively and make it look really nice. But if you're going to go high end, that you could cost 10 times that much and never get that value out of it. So I think the key is what appeals to the most number of people and what would they want to spend more money on? How do we make it look like it's trendy and high end without spending a lot of dollars?
And here's the relative answer to that question. So you have to look at it in 2 different ways. One, the person actually doing the investment. Okay, so everyone has their own level of ability. I have a level of ability that's equal to you guys when it comes to what we can take on. I can take on a big project because hell, I've seen so many of them. You've seen them. They're all the same. But if I was someone who's done 2 or 3, I may not take on the backyard, paradise. I just might not, because I could lose it all, or I could do it really, really well and not know the difference of how that happened versus being able to call the shots in advance. So the first way that I would add value is work within a basis of a skill set to start. And that would be if I have no flips, no investments, no sales under my belt, period, none of those things, I would start with a very basic list. That basic list would be simplify, clean up, and get rid of. Make sure you've got everything clean, simple. Don't try and do this room as the man cave with all of its glory, and then this room as the master suite with this, and that, and add 400 square feet. If you don't have the experience for that piece of a project, bring it in and do this and this. Keep it inside the box. Make it very simple, very clean, very organized.
And curb appeal is huge. Remove excess
Basic
vegetation that's hiding the house. Thin
Going
it
back
out,
to
clean it up,
clean,
keep it simple, and do what is inexpensive. Yes.
Yeah.
You can make a yard look really nice without spending a lot of money on it.
And the way to understand that is addition by subtraction. The way you add value is to take away. And that's actually the first thing we do when we actually talk about selling someone's house and it's got their stuff. I said it earlier, I have to take all of your stuff out so I can put our stuff in a way that simplifies and unifies your space. So the first thing would be work within the confines of your current ability set. And you can expand from there, but do it gradually unless you're a person who just likes taking on massive amounts of risk. That's number 1. Number 2 is add square footage after you've maintained the value itself inside the house. If you have not maximized the interior value, don't add any more. You need to make sure the space inside is okay first. Don't buy a house at a good deal with a really weird floor plan and a funky 2-bedroom situation because you want to add the third. If there's not a really great way to add the third, don't just add a third. It has to be conducive to the floor plan you have. So first would be understanding that space. And this is the last thing. As odd as it is, We do not buy size. Now we do, but that's not how we buy, it's how we shop. What we buy is space. And to make this example, really make sense to people, what I usually do is I stand next to somebody. I said, look, to understand this, we buy space. And then I stand real close. I said, does this feel weird to you? And instantly it's just this feeling like, yeah, that's because we feel close, because we've got this imaginary 3-foot ring around us that says we shouldn't be this close. Now, and that's maybe this culture, but that is the way we feel. And so we go in a house that feels cluttered or cramped or anything it happens to feel color-wise, it feels off. And we say that. That's the only way we can really say to make that make sense. It feels weird. This doesn't feel right. And that's how residential people will say that to make it make sense to themselves. So you have to clear that stuff out and give yourself the ability to be free inside the property without having these funky corners and weird closets and, oh, there's this weird room over here. Those are the projects you really kind of want to pass on unless you really want to take on the restructuring of that floor plan or get it at a crazy good deal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Brian, I think you brought up some really good points. The best way to add value is to simplify, clean, open up, and then really make it more market ready. People live in a home and sometimes they focus on themselves, but you're really trying to make this marketable. And that's really where that cost benefit analysis comes in. So thanks again for giving your thoughts on ways that you can add value in residential real estate. Steve, I want to thank you for your contributions because you've done a lot of these, and we'll talk with you a little bit more as we talk about adding value in land improvements, as well as some other focuses on commercial ways of adding value. You're watching The Real Men of Real Estate. Watch us on YouTube. We've got a website, Real Men of Real Estate. You also can find us on Facebook. We encourage you to interact with us. Send us your questions and stay tuned. We've got more great content. And thank you so much.